Whenever you ask someone about realism, they usually mention, say, The Dark Knight or one of Noah Baumbach's films, but those don't have full authenticity. You still notice famous actors there, and you still notice people that you recognize, and things happen that you haven't experienced. In order to achieve true authenticity, a style called Italian neorealism was invented. It was created in post World War II Italy after the fall of Mussolini, which led to people rebelling against the studio systems that he'd created. The filmmakers there decided to make their own films that were independent and low budget and didn't use studios or well known actors. So, instead of using well known actors and studios, they just used streets and ordinary people. You could see someone just walking down the street and they could be starring in a new movie. You never know. Because these weren't actors like our Brad Pitts or Christian Bales. These are just normal people that were used in a story. In fact, a lot of the dialogue was improvised to give it that more realistic edge, since some dialogue naturally doesn't sound too real. Dialogue in Italian neorealist films is often charming and realistic, but often has a certain, how would I put it, eloquent nature. It's very common for dialogue in these films to be a little different from reality, but it still feels pretty real. And plus, I'm not from Italy, so I'm not sure if I can judge too well. In the beginning of the film Bicycle Thieves, we see Antonio and his son Bruno standing in line to get a job. We get the general idea that Antonio does not own a bicycle when he talks to the applicant and says, "Can't we just walk here?" But then the applicant says, "No, you have to take a bicycle." We get the idea that they're poor due to their clothes, and when we eventually see the interior of the house, this is confirmed. Later, we learn that originally Antonio had a bike, but he pawned it off, so they had no bike. Later in the story, they decide to get a bike by buying it from a store, and they go to start the job. While Antonio is putting on posters and Bruno is meant to keep watch over the bike is stolen and they yell thief. Later in the movie, they try doing the same thing by stealing a bike, but when someone yells thief, people grab on and listen. Here, though, people ignore them, which is obviously a statement on class towards the end, because, like I said, Bruno and Antonio are very poor. Later, they try to find the parts for the bike, and they find nothing, sadly. They decide to just go eat and drink, and Antonio gives his kid Bruno a sip of wine. Antonio gives Bruno a mozzarella sandwich as well, which he seems to have not eaten much, as he looks over at another child who's eating a mozzarella sandwich and tries to impress him with his. We see this kid later, but we learn that he is indeed crippled. We then see Antonio and Bruno walking away disappointed as they come across a man that they believe is the thief. They see him and approach him and try to talk to him, but he says he doesn't know anything. He is old and claims that they are just bothering an old man, but later we learn that he might have something to do with this. When they go to the church, they find the same man there, and they try to convince him to come with them to help find the bike after they finally get him to admit that he knows something about the bike. Sadly, though, he runs outside and does not get caught by them as he runs away. Antonio and Bruno then walk across to the river, and we hear that a kid is drowning. In the film, it's made to look like that they think Bruno is drowning, but really it's just some other kid that they know nothing about. Antonio gets scared, but thankfully Bruno is fine, because he does not know. Everyone in the scene that's not Bruno and Antonio gangs up on them and yells at them, and eventually the boy has a seizure. Realizing the mistake that they made, Antonio tries to apologize and they walk away, feeling sorry for what they've done. They begin to feel very sad towards the end and decide to resort to stealing a bicycle. Now, I'd just like to point this out since this seems interesting, but what if the person who stole their bicycle went through a very similar process? What if, although they stole it from a more poor family, the thief of Antonio's bicycle, that is, so people didn't seem to care as much, but Antonio and Bruno make the mistake of stealing from a richer person's bicycle. They are condemned and caught, and the people around them try to turn them into the police. The owner of the bicycle says it's fine, and the other people tell them that they got away easily. But did they really? They went through all this pain just to fail to attempt to get a bicycle and lose theirs. At the end of the day, the story is a tragedy, but one that still has heart and still has an emotional warmth to it. Bicycle Thieves is what I'd consider to be one of the finest films of all time, especially Italian cinema, which is, everyone likes Italian cinema. But Bicycle Thieves is a masterpiece. I usually don't say that often, but I'm pretty okay with giving Bicycle Thieves a 10 out of 10.